Today on Marketing Mavericks, we talk about Apple and their big event. Why do we care so much? And is John Legere's bad boy image helping or hurting the T-Mobile brand? And is the NFL setting the right example for fans? We're going to talk about that and so much more coming up next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Marketing Mavericks is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This episode of Marketing Mavericks is brought to you by Shutterstock.com. With over 40 million high-quality stock photos, illustrations, vectors, video clips, Shutterstock helps you take your creative projects to the next level. For 20% off subscription packages on new accounts, go to Shutterstock.com and use the offer code MM914. And by ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter makes hiring faster, easier, and cheaper. Post your job to 50-plus job boards with one click. Try ZipRecruiter with a free 4-day trial now at ZipRecruiter.com/MM. That's ZipRecruiter.com/MM. This is Marketing Mavericks, episode 23, recorded Monday, September 15, 2014. One more thing. Welcome to Marketing Mavericks, where we talk about everything at the intersection of technology and marketing, what's happening in advertising, how our brands responding to the web, and so much more. Today, there's lots to talk about, as usual, and we have a full lineup of guests to talk about those topics, including the Apple event and Tim Cook, how they presented themselves. We've also got a lot of other things to talk about, the Ravens, the football controversy, and so much more. Our guests today include Carmine Gallo, who is the communications coach and author of Talk Like TED. Hello, and welcome, Carmine.
Hello. Thanks for inviting me.
Frank Eliason is back with us, and he is the global director of customer care at Citi. An author, by the way.
Social media, Social media, care.
And, well, it's always been customer care. I can never forget
I'm
that.
always going to be a service guy, it's actually my preference in life over social media.
And your book is at your service.
That is correct.
We've also got Brett King, who's the founder and CEO of Moven. Welcome.
You can just introduce me as a friend of Frank.
And a friend of Frank and a radio show host and so much more. I think you've got the longest list next to Natali of what you do. And Natali Morris, who's a longtime friend of Twit and a contributor at so many places, including CNBC. Welcome.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Yes, indeedy. How is Natali, I've been following you all summer, and I'm a little jealous. You've gotten, go camping. You're doing all kinds of fun stuff. I'm a little jealous.
I do seem like a much cooler person on Twitter, but that's because you only really share the highlights, right? I mean, today...
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm a cool person on Twitter.
Right. Although I do have a little bit of like a personality complex. Like, I feel like I need to see my therapist about who I think I am on Twitter versus who I am in real life, because then I see other friends that are way funnier than me, and I really go back and forth. Like, I have something funny to say. Maybe it's not funny. I don't know. I'm going to say it. And when I say it, no one thinks it's funny, then it really hurts my feelings. And I'm like, this funny girl probably thinks that's dumb what I just said. And it's way too much going on in my head about just Twitter or any social network.
I was going to say any social network. Pinterest, I feel like I'm not up to snuff if I don't look like my Pinterest board or if I'm not doing those things. And Instagram, I mean, how do people come up with some of that witty stuff? And don't even ask me to do the hyper, video. I can't even start to go there.
Yeah, I know. It's all designed to it's another way to sell us back our own mediocrity.
We're tortured souls.
I know. Why do I care?
Well, that said, speaking of our impression, I think our first topic is one that everybody's been talking about, which is the Big Apple event. Before we got the show started, we were talking about who ordered the phone, who stayed up late. There was all kinds of drama. I didn't even order the phone, and I was up watching people on the internet talking about the drama they were having with their phone company, and they couldn't order the phone because they, their carrier wasn't, doing the right thing, but yet they outsold every other iPhone sell to date, and most people are getting the phone that the big one, right? You said you got the really big one, right, Natali?
I did. Yep. I got the big mama.
No more skinny jeans for you.
But I got a purse, right? So it's okay.
I'm sorry. I'm going to stick with my regular size phone that actually fits in my tiny little hand for now. But it is big news, and we all pay attention to this. And as a brand, Apple has been notorious for their big launch and their marketing efforts and what that means. And Tim Cook, this was a really big deal for Tim because this was his first real coming out. I think it was something that he really made an effort, especially with the Apple Watch, which I want to.
Can we say that about Tim Cook?
Can we? I don't know, Carmine. Let's go to you.
He's coming out.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even. That's.
You're the only one who
Sorry.
did that.
Thanks, Carmine. But really, I mean, this was an opportunity for him and for Apple. I mean, they've not done really well with events in the past, and this wasn't any different. We did a live special here, Leo and Mike Elgin and Sarah, and we had contributors that were focused on, talking about the event as it was happening, but the live stream failed most of the time. And then there was a Mandarin speaker. And I think, Natali, you were, as well as everybody else on Twitter, was talking about, I can't understand what they're saying. And so the event itself didn't actually come off really smoothly from the standpoint of the streaming and everything else. So what does this mean? How come a big company like Apple, who is in the technology business, can't seem to put on a smooth, cohesive launch at an event like this? Carmine, let's let you tackle this first, since this is your area of expertise.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing about the streaming, I was watching it live, and I experienced all the technical problems that everybody else did, but I knew that we bloggers, the people who are on Twitter, and I was trying to live tweet it, and it upset us. But I also realized that within 2 hours after the event, nobody would be talking about it in the product reviews, and it hasn't really hurt sales. So I think these are kind of like inside baseball type of things that I think upset we who are trying to cover it more so, I think. But what was interesting is they obviously knew that, and I don't know who got fired over that. I mean, you're right, Tonya. It's unbelievable that with all of the preparation, all of the technical preparation, and people don't even appreciate what Apple puts into it. I mean, it is thousands of man hours to put on these presentations, rehearsals for weeks. It's unreal. With all of that preparation, I am at a loss, frankly, to explain how is it possible that a live feed can go down. I mean, you can go on Ustream or on any other platform, and it seems to work pretty well. So I have no idea what happened. Maybe one of the other technical folks could tell us.
Well,
Carmine,
I think it looked like it was like the live stream didn't go down, but their homepage went down because of there was a technical article
it was the
written
homepage.
about this. It was the live updates that they were adding in that was polling constantly. So the stream, was not so much as the issue as their website was freezing up and having issues. But I don't know.
Well, it was a JavaScript kept pulling.
JavaScript.
It was sending a refresh to the. So because they had the two going at the same time, but it was technically on the page, is what caused the technical issue, at least on the one piece. Now we also have the piece where the person over speaking Mandarin, Chinese, or whatever they were speaking, that was more on the streaming company. Like many big events, they hired an outside company to do the streaming pieces of it and the video of it. And so I don't necessarily know they'll be using that company in the future, although the web glitches were not that company's fault.
But they always seem to have a problem. Why can't they seem to get it right? I mean, yeah, you're right, Carmine. I mean, this really is something that, as people who are really into this, we're watching the live stream, we drop everything. I don't care.
We're all frustrated. All of us on this call are,
But this didn't affect sales. I mean, Natali, you ordered the big phone, right?
Yeah, it seemed like people didn't care, but then I had to ask myself, who is watching this, right? I was sitting at headquarters at CNBC with another one of our guests on, and we were watching it, but we also had a feed from our cameraman who was inside. So I had them side by side, and I was like, this one's really frustrating. I could see what was going on, thankfully, from from the NBC feed, but I just felt like it was so unacceptable, and everyone was screaming on Twitter. But then they were so enamored by what was actually going on that only the super geeks were watching it, right? It was really good for like Twit and PC Magazine and CNET, where everybody went and watched their live stream then instead, because otherwise, why would you choose to do that instead of watch it yourself? So a bunch of people just had to click off and go watch someone's live blog.
Yeah, it was
But
great
I
for the
think
live bloggers.
It was more than just a matter of, something wrong with refreshing their feed, because we got the cable screen before we even got the live feed. So we were getting a live feed to the TV cable stations, which that should never have gone out on the web. So it was all very perplexing. But it's I don't know, it's like a zit you had last week. No one remembers but you, right?
And you'll never forget. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so let's talk about this from Apple fan people. Because even I'm not I have an iPad, but I'm not an Apple fan girl. But I was still, it's any big tech event, and this is the big tech event, right? It's a big one. They've managed to keep fans excited, and it doesn't matter if they're speaking in Mandarin or not speaking at all. People get frustrated, but they're so excited. And they went out and they broke a record, 4 million pre-orders for the phone. That's huge. And I was up just watching, what people were doing. So as a brand, I guess they've done some things right. Carmine, think about what other brands could be doing, and I want to get to T-Mobile in a second, but you've recently obviously written a book, and this is something that you've spent a lot of time on. What is it that they're doing so right when they're doing so many other things not great? They just are getting by, I think, sometimes.
Well, certainly when it comes to communication, they've thought this through. I think Apple, I remember speaking to a neuroscientist when I was writing a book on how to deliver a presentation like Steve Jobs. And I remember speaking to a neuroscientist who studies advertising and design and display. And I said, who does it best? Just in terms of communication, everything from the in-store signage to the presentations, who does it best? And he said, well, without question, everything from the website to the design is Apple. I said, okay, yeah, I know that. That's fine. That's cliche. Who does it second and third? He said, Apple and Apple. They have really fine-tuned how best to touch people emotionally. And it starts with those keynote presentations. They are the most dazzling display of presentations anybody's ever seen. I've actually put out this challenge for years. If you can find a company or a group of executives who deliver better presentations on a global scale, public presentations, I'd love to see it. I'll write a whole book on them because I haven't found it yet. That presentation, which Apple does a really neat job, they put the presentation on the front page of their website. Who does that? Because they are no other company I know really does that, and they are so proud of what they've done. It is, and I'm not necessarily a fanboy, necessarily. We've got PCs and Apple here in the office, but yeah, I am a fanboy in terms of their presentation. I think it's the most gorgeously designed presentations around, and that was a perfect example. Last Tuesday was a perfect example. You cannot watch that presentation and go back to your typical PowerPoint or Apple Keynote, whatever it is you're using now, and look at presentations the same way again. It was beautifully designed.
Can I jump in with a couple of thoughts as well?
Please do.
So, I'm on the speaking circuit, and I know Frank is as well. And when you speak in front of, 20,000 people a year, and you sort of have to lift your speaking game up to that level, Apple is a great benchmark. But the thing you also realize is that in the old days when you're a consultant and you're putting PowerPoint up there and you're presenting data and facts, often you use PowerPoint or those sort of communication tools in the wrong way. Because if people are reading those slides, then they're not listening to you. And Apple does that great balance of using the visuals as a storytelling component to help support the story of what they're doing. And that's what really makes a difference, because we get involved in the story of Apple and their new products in a way that you wouldn't do with a typical presentation that you have. They're really good at the art of storytelling.
I also would say that they're really good at attention to detail in almost everything they do. And then the other component that I think is key is they try and play on the emotional side. They look at the images they choose. Almost everything is lined up to emotion. And so they're trying to build on that excitement. They're trying to get their audience excited that's in the room, but also anybody that may watch the video at any time. There's a lot of it that is about emotion.
I don't know what it says about me, but the two things that I really remember are the big scarf and the pink shirt. I don't know. No.
I remember the pink shirt too. Yes.
No, they did do some really great things, and they do a great job. But do they, are they really up to the same snuff that they were when Steve Jobs was around? I mean, are these the right kind of presentations? And what can other companies learn from, trying to put on, I will say this, Salesforce, Mark does a great job with their Dreamforce. I mean, they have that. It's a phenomenal event, really, when they come out every year,
Sure.
and so many other events are also the same. But it doesn't seem to me that that Apple does the same thing, but yet we're all still there. So it doesn't really impact our reporting, and it certainly doesn't impact sales. So are these events that companies put on, like the Dreamforce or the Apple event, is that really that important? Brett?
Well,
Natali?
it's almost like a spiral of silence. If you don't, I mean, there are plenty of people who are happy to hate on Apple, but because it's so big and so grand, everyone kind of buys into it. And I've been to press conferences for Samsung and AT&T and, every manufacturer you can think of, but no one's bought in the same way. Like I've been to a Galaxy, or even a Kindle Fire. I've been to those kind of events. No one is swooning in the aisles. That happens at Apple. People are basically passing out like they've just seen the Beatles and it's 1960. I'm not kidding. This is just how it happens.
And it's not, the Beatles. But okay. Well, one of the things that came out of this event was also the this idea of using your phone and replacing, your credit cards. The evolution of banking, which we've seen with Amazon, we're seeing now Apple is entering that competitive space, and I don't know. I think there's some excitement around that. I mean, I'm kind of excited to maybe not have to whip out a credit card, but at the same time, I don't know. It seems like there's all kinds of security issues. I don't know. I mean, are we seeing the end? I mean, you guys, Frank, you work for a pretty big company that's in the banking business. And Brett, I know you talk about this, but are we seeing the end of physical bank cards? Is Apple going to, and Amazon, are we going to do away with these guys? So just break them in half and toss them?
I think Apple... Oh, go ahead, Brett. We've been talking about this a lot online, so go for it.
It's inevitable, right? Because, when you think about Moore's Law and all of these technologies we see the example of the Kindle in recent years and iTunes. We're looking at radical simplification. That's part of the design process, but there's a lot of friction in banking and finance, and that's really what Apple is sort of trying to solve, that making it very easy. But the other element of this, and let's not forget, mobile payments have been around for a lot longer than just Apple Pay launched last week. Japan's had this technology for 8-9 years, so the US has been quite slow to adapt to this. But the real value is not using your device to pay at the point of sale. It's the fact that you have something now that can give you feedback and insights. It can give you information before a transaction, after a transaction. And in addition to that, is 4 or 5 times more secure than the piece of plastic you carry around in your wallet.
What does this mean? I mean, and I guess I would ask Natali. I mean, you're a mother and you've got children that are going to be experiencing a whole new way to purchase. I mean, I can imagine that when your kids are old enough to have their own, purchasing power, that they won't understand credit cards. They won't understand bank cards, and that they'll be buying and purchasing in a much different way. I mean, I think Brett, I was watching a video with you even talking about, they won't go into a lending office and to get a mortgage. All these things will change, right? Natali, how do you expect your kids will adapt?
Mute. Yeah, I agree that it's all going to change. I'm not convinced that this is the way, but there's a lot of potential here. In fact, I still watch the Bitcoin market with a lot of interest because there's so much about payments now, whether it be with a credit card or a phone or any of these sort of smart devices, that is still running on an old infrastructure. So even if I use Apple Pay to pay for something at Whole Foods with my phone, it's still running very, very old 1970s infrastructure. So I think when we really see something change is when either that infrastructure is updated, which will be very hard, or maybe Bitcoin does take off because there's a lot of potential there. You can transfer money in Bitcoin in nanoseconds, whereas if I want to PayPal you something, how long does that take? 2 days, right?
Have you purchased something with Bitcoin or any of the other coin digital currency?
Cryptocurrencies.
Have you?
No, I haven't yet. And I know there are a lot of different ways. In fact, I just did a story about a company in San Francisco called Shift Payments, which is trying to make a credit card that can switch currencies between either your debit card, your credit card, or your Bitcoin wallet. I think that maybe that's an interim solution. What happens with Bitcoin, I hope, is that the technology that it's built on eventually comes into the currencies that we use. I don't care if it's going to be Bitcoin. I don't care if it's going to be dollar. I don't care if it's going to be yen, right? But I want a more secure and a more efficient payment transfer system. And we don't have that yet. And this is just, it's replacing a thing with a thing, right? But it doesn't make it easier for us because we still have to have a thing.
So
I would disagree. I think it takes it a step. It's not all the way. Yeah. It's not into Bitcoin. But you know what? What is different? Now, every transaction will have a different card because basically what Apple's doing is they're not acting like your credit card. They're not acting like your bank. They're not acting like the merchant. They're just this intermediary that's passing the information over, but they're passing over a number that can only be used one time. They're not passing over your personal information. This is one of the reasons why a number of brands don't want to be involved in Apple Pay, because all of a sudden they will not be able to track your purchases based upon your credit card information, because every time you use it, it will be something different. So they can't track who you are. It's a problem for some merchants. That's why they're declining to involve. So I would say this is a nice step. Is it the speedy process that you're talking about, such as if I send you money right now, you should get it right now? No, it's not. This is kind of something being built on top of a lot of existing infrastructure, but there is a lot of differences. You know, in my view, if it's done right, it should be much safer than using your credit card. You know, assuming that everything is encrypted the way they're talking about and not being stored the way they're talking about. You know, just taking Apple for what they've said so far. And as we've taken that, I think that's exciting to me. I think it should drop fraud tremendously, as well as start to make it easier. Because I thought Tim Cook said something during his speech. He said, you know, the problem to most payments out there, payment solutions out there, is they really thought first about trying to monetize it, not necessarily about the user experience. And I agree with that. I think that's been the number one problem in the whole payment space and why no one's really changed behaviors to get people to use other devices. But
can I pick up on something that Frank is saying?
Yeah.
Please.
When you're done. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
That's
He's
awesome.
done now.
And
He's done now.
He's done now.
What's very interesting about what Frank just said is this whole idea of when Tim Cook talked about the user experience. And obviously we know that especially with payments and any new technology, one of the big hurdles that you have to overcome is that simplicity and ease of use, you know, for people like me who might be a little technology challenged. What Apple does really, really well, and they started doing this under Steve Jobs, probably after he returned in 97. They started doing this really beautifully in presentations, is they always spend a couple of minutes outlining the problem before the solution. So in communication theory, you know, those geeks like us who study narratives, that's hero-villain. But what Apple does is present the villain before the hero. If you remember, and those of you who saw the video or the stream, you know, maybe later after it actually went up, this was the problem. Great, I'm glad you're showing the video. This was the problem. This was a video that actually took, you know, a few seconds, and then Tim Cook came out and said, and now we're introducing Apple Pay. Our vision is to replace the wallet. And he showed the video that this is antiquated. He actually pointed out that the scan on the back is how many years old, how many decades old. He pointed that out as well. But what they did then is I'm sure you remember, Tonya, they showed a video of how long it would take with Apple Pay. The video was, by the time he walked off stage, the video was done, right? It was like under 7 seconds. And he comes walking out and he said, that's how fast it is. That's it. That's it. And then it was a really interesting way of giving a presentation because he built up that emotion. People were clapping, people were applauding. That's it. That's exactly where he was saying it. And then he said, do you want to see it again in case you blinked and you missed it? And they showed this video again. They shortened it. It was like 4 seconds. I thought that was a brilliant little piece of just theater. That's what they do. They turn this into theater.
Can I give you guys some context around the security issue, though, and to Natalie's point about infrastructure? This is actually a key element. You guys obviously familiar with the Target breach and the Home Depot card breach recently that's occurred. Some of this has occurred because of the magnetic stripe technology that we use here in the United States. Most of the rest of the developed world has signed on to the EMV standard, the Europay, MasterCard, Visa standard with chip and PIN many years ago. And the problem with this is right now, the US has 25% of the world's credit card and debit card transactions, but we have 51% of the fraud. This is a major issue for the United States that they have to solve. So the reason Apple waited is there wasn't the imperative to replace the point of sale infrastructure until that Target and Home Depot breach occurred. Now there's that shift towards swapping out that technology, and they've come in just at the right time to capitalize on that because these new point of sale terminals will also be able to accept NFC mobile payments.
So we obviously love it. I mean, obviously, Carmine, you think this was a brilliant theatrical move, and everybody's applauding, and we're all excited about it. But what is Citi? So, and I know, Natali, you said you're going to use digital currency. So, from a banking standpoint, what are the banks doing to capitalize on this evolution of banking? I mean, are they going to come up with their own version? Are they just going to jump on board with the devices? I mean, what do you say about that, Frank or Brett?
I was going to say, if you look, Citi is a partner with Apple for Apple Pay. We are a partner with Google for a Google Wallet. Ultimately, we are building these partnerships, to make this happen and bring it forward. At the same time, we have our own payment structure that's also in place. And so, this whole thing is about creating this right user experience. And it is thinking differently than the way we always have. But at the same time, it's overcoming infrastructure aspects. And I think Apple did a really nice job of coming up and getting a lot of parties together. They have Visa, they have MasterCard, they have, American Express, and they also have the major banks all involved, as well as the processing and a number of retailers. That's a huge consortium to come together to make Apple Pay a possibility. So I think that you have to applaud them for that, because a lot of struggle to get all those different people together to bring something to light. And so I think you're going to see a lot of changes. I think, Apple Pay is going to cause more to come. If users use it as much as I think they will, if it's as easy as it looked in that 4-second video.
Right. They made it look easy.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah. If it is, I actually, as soon as I watched it, I said, if that's successful, if you can do it just like that, Apple Pay will really push mobile payments far beyond what any of these other initiatives have done. And once that happens, then you'll start to see changes. I don't necessarily think the solutions are going to be these cards that hold multiple things, because all of a sudden your data's on that card for 20 different cards you carry and get stolen and you're in trouble. Or we switch to chip and PIN and the card can't deal with chip and PIN. So I think there's a lot of challenges to a lot of the other devices that are out there. And I think Apple thought it through with some of their solutions. And I think they'll push the industry forward. And I applaud them for that. I love that we're a part of it.
So go ahead, Brett.
So I think Frank's absolutely right. This is the start. The first step is to get this inside the phone, right? And the next step is to say, well, hang on a second, we actually don't need a card proxy at all anymore, because, we can just pass information back. And if that's in real time connected to my bank account that's on my phone. So, this could be really interesting. We could just see, eliminate the need for plastic, and we go straight to downloading our bank account to our phone in the future. that's the real promise of this. So that's where this logically will take us.
So the latecomers, we talked about not all retailers are on board right now, but I think the ones that are holding back are consistently the ones that aren't, that hold back. I mean, you talk about Walmart and I mean, the ever so dying Best Buy, sadly, they're not joining in. Is it a good thing to wait and see how this is going to go, or are they going to miss the boat and end up like Radio Shack? Nobody wants to answer that one.
Best Buy had contactless terminals in their stores, and they've actually started rolling them back out. So I don't know quite why they did that, but I think also Apple's play to point of Frank and Carmine is, I think they've got something else up their sleeve now where they're going to start thinking about what happens in store and how do they motivate you to use their payments ecosystem over someone else's. And this is where they're looking at merchant deals and other things like that and iBeacon technology in the store. And I think Walmart and Best Buy are looking at that play and saying that's what really concerns us. Not opening the door for mobile payments. We're cool with that. But there's also a competing schema from some of these guys, which Walmart is involved, which is called the MCX or Merchant Exchange. And this is their own mobile payment solution that they're working on. So they're hoping that they're not hoping Apple fails. They're actually would be quite happy for Apple to succeed if it leads people to using their own wallet that they're working on at the moment.
And it seems
Brett brings up a good point too. A lot of people forget that. I spent a year studying the Apple retail model. A lot of people forget that most of the innovations today in retail actually started from Apple and the Apple Store going back to 2001. I mean, they were the ones who really pioneered the whole mobile point of purchase sale and doing away with cash registers and cashiers and stuff. So, I wouldn't be surprised if something like that is going on.
Well, and what we look to Apple to do is change consumer behavior more than corporate behavior, because we are, I can come up with a laundry list of things that people did before Apple, and then Apple came along and taught consumers how to use it in a friendly way. So is this the right infrastructure that's the payment of the future? No. Is it going to evolve? Yes. Is the infrastructure going to have to change and get more secure? Yes. That's all true. But here's what Apple can do. Teach my mom to do it. Teach my mother-in-law to do it. And that small piece of changing consumer behavior is what's going to then change the industry, because it has to move from early adopters to consumers. Then companies will get on board. It can't go the other way around, because Home Depot has been allowing you to pay with PayPal for like 2 years now. Who does that? Does anyone do that?
Nope.
No. So we've had lots of mobile payment solutions in retail stores that we all visit on a regular basis. But Apple's the one who will consumerize it.
I think the most successful example to date in the US has been Starbucks. And I think what's been, Starbucks is a mobile payments app. You wouldn't think of it necessarily as mobile payments, but they got that balance right of some value in the store, some freebies, some loyalty elements to that. And they were really successful at that. But again, to Carmine's point, Apple's made the play on the simplicity element. They've made the play on making it really easy to do. And if you get enough mass consumer traction behind that, then that is going to move the entire banking and payments industry along with them. And that's what Apple can do.
I think, Natali, you nailed it for sure when you talked about changing consumer behavior, because I think this is a very confusing space right now. I made a promise, I think, to Patrick Byrne that I was going to buy my sofa on Overstock with their new digital currency. I don't even know what that is yet. And I'm not even sure I know how to use digital currency completely. I'm not comfortable with it. So I think there's a lot happening in this space. So we're going to see a huge evolution in banking. And I don't know, are banks going to be leading that, or is it going to be the technology companies like Amazon or Apple? I don't know. I think it's all about consumer behavior, and your little ones will be the ones to test that, right, Natali?
Oh, I'm sure we'll have it figured out by then. Who knows? They're still.
My daughter's
now
13,
they just plunk
13.
coins in an actual porcelain pig. So
I have one of those.
Yeah.
My daughter's almost 14, but I often say to bankers, she's never going to write a check in her life. But the most natural thing for her to do would be text money or send you money through the mobile phone.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk more about that. I also want to talk about T-Mobile's big announcement and how The cellular industry is changing. I want to talk about the NFL and some issues there with leadership and what that means. But before we do, I want to thank a sponsor of Marketing Mavericks, which is Shutterstock.com, because this episode is brought to you by them. That's right. At Shutterstock.com, you'll find the perfect image or video for your next creative project, whether it's for your website or a publication. Maybe it's an ad that you're creating or a video that you're producing or any other type of project. You can choose from over 40 million. That's right. 40 million high quality stock photos, illustrations, vectors, video clip. Shutterstock sources images from all around the world and puts them right at your fingertips. Many contributors to Shutterstock are professional photographers and artists. Shutterstock reviews each image individually and its content for quality before adding it to its library. Shutterstock adds, get this. I can't even fathom this number. 275,000 images every week. So every time you visit, you'll find something new. Shutterstock has flexible pricing. You can choose individual image packs or monthly subscriptions for the best deal, and standard subscription is 25 images a day. Like, who's going to use 25? I mean, maybe some of us who are addicted to the internet like me. And you can download any image in any size and pay only one price, which is also such a great deal. Shutterstock gives you the images you need to bring your creative projects to the next level, and they make it easy. Shutterstock has sophisticated search tools. You can search for anything. Drill down on, the color, the palette, the file, the gender, emotion, whatever. It's got great search, so you can find the best image for you. And they also have shareable lightboxes. Save the images to a lightbox gallery, then access them anytime to share them with your team members, which is awesome if you have a business where you're trying to, communicate with people. Hey, we want to use this for our presentation. You pick the images and send them to the person who's putting it together. And they also have an award-winning iPad app. Search on the go and use it to display images during presentations. Like I said, it's awesome. Shutterstock is a global marketplace. They have a multilingual customer service in more than a dozen international countries and full-time customer support throughout the week. Who does that? Shutterstock, that's who. So no credit card needed. Here's what you need to do. Just try Shutterstock today by signing up for a free account. Like I said, no credit card needed. Perfect for this show, right? I mean, exactly what we're talking about. Just start an account and begin using Shutterstock to help imagine what your next project could be like and save your favorite images to your Lightbox to review later. Once you decide to purchase, use offer code MM914 and new accounts receive 20% off image subscription packages. That's Shutterstock.com. And for 20% off image subscription packages on new accounts, use offer code MM914. And we thank Shutterstock for their support of Marketing Mavericks. I'm telling you, you do not want to steal images off the internet at all. It's not a good idea for your blog or your business. Use
and they look really,
ones.
really bad when you do.
And you'll get busted, right? People do it, but it's not a good idea. Be professional. Use a good image source. I mean, are you guys photographers? I mean, I take pictures, but mine aren't as good. Just saying.
I use Shutterstock. I mean, I have no affiliation with them, obviously, but I do use them for the presentations. You got to use the high resolution images. Seriously, you really do. You can't just take these. People go to Google Images and they take something and they put in the presentation and it's grainy and it's not the right resolution and you're stealing it and it's just a mess.
It's a mess. And you need to be professional. Okay, I want to talk about an event that took place. I don't know if you guys were following, but T-Mobile. First off, how can you not know who John Legere is, right? I mean, the guy is everywhere. He's kind of the magenta Batman, if you will. He is the Batman of the cellular industry, and they're really trying to make a difference. They had an event this last week where they called it, I think it was exclusive for the press. They live streamed it and did a better job, by the way, of a much bigger company that I will not discuss again, but no, they did a great job. And they tried to keep it on the DL. When I was trying to find out what they were going to announce, they were like, no, we can't tell you anything. And the password is, what's that 20s? What is it when you want to get into a secret bar? What is it? What's it called? Anybody? No.
I don't know.
I've never used that password.
I can't think of it now. Anyway, but it was like, what's that? A speakeasy. Thank you.
Oh,
good thing our audience is paying attention. Thanks, guys. It's a speakeasy. So they had this kind of whole theme, and John Legere, they announced that they're going to, let you have, Wi-Fi data, through other countries. And they were trying to really break ground. And he made some pretty bold statements saying they were going to he specifically said they were going to take down Sprint this year, and next would be AT&T, which I think is pretty bold. But that's how he runs, and he's certainly getting a lot of people excited. And I think he's trying to create his own T-Mobile fan base like Apple has done in the past. What do you guys say? I mean, is he doing it right? I mean, T-Mobile used to be the phone service for pimps and prostitutes and drug dealers, and it wasn't really that serious. Wow. I'm saying I love you, John, but it's true.
It's not a gross generalization.
All that. Wow.
But now,
didn't he say stick a fork in them? Was that right?
I think he did.
Yeah, I think it said he was talking about Sprint. He said, stick a fork in Sprint, they're done.
Yep, he did.
But, you were talking about Benioff. I mean, Mark Benioff says a lot of bold statements like that. And isn't that John Legere's, that's his personality, isn't it, from what I've seen before?
He's such a renegade. I can't wait to get an interview with him. But yeah, I mean... I do. I love it.
Inconsistent with his brand? Is it inconsistent with the brand?
It's very consistent. And I think that's why I'm really interested in what they're doing. I mean, they totally play on it. If you follow Twitter, whenever he's talking or whenever their Twitter team is active, people are like, yeah, I'm leaving my current company. I'm going with T-Mobile. People jump on that bandwagon. So as a leader, as a CEO, I mean, it seems like he's doing the right thing, even though he's calling everybody out. And their numbers reflect it. They've had 3 times the success this year they've had over any other year, 3 times revenue. So I don't know. What do you think about that, Carmine?
Well, again, I mean, I'm looking at it as a communication, and obviously it's very consistent with the man's brand. So it didn't surprise me at all. And we'll see how their whole retail model, obviously a lot of it, frankly, is copied from Apple stores. AT&T has been doing a much better job with its retail model. I'm not talking about the network per se, but certainly with retail. It is now one of the best retail models out there in all of retail is AT&T Wireless. So it'll be interesting to see if this carries through. But from I'm a communicator. I'm a former journalist. Those are the type of interviews I like. Those they grab attention.
What do you say about that, Brett? You're a big speaker. You definitely interview a lot of people. You have your own show, and you talk about people like Mr. Legere. I mean, is he the brand, or is the brand living up to his bold statements?
Well, we have a saying, go big or go home, right? He's put it out there. Now, he's got a lot to live up to because he's put his stake in the ground. I think that, this space is getting increasingly dynamic. There's been a lot of attempts at mergers and things like that lately. Coming back to the Apple stuff, I thought that this new way of calling on the Wi-Fi sort of picocell type approach, but also that they're augmenting the phone call with the watch. This could really change the dynamic of this. Do these cell companies just become the dumb pipes for data, or do they continue to have more value beyond this? I think part of this is a scrambling for value in this ecosystem beyond just being the dumb pipe for apps and data now.
Yeah, but at the same time,
as we're talking about demographics, though, we have to ask the same question that we asked about the Tim Cook keynote: is who's watching, right? The typical T-Mobile user is not watching John Legere. They don't know him. They don't care. They'll only care if he says something super racist or gets naked in a keynote or, I don't know, beats up his girlfriend, right? That's the only time we care about who leads companies, is when they do something super offensive or if they're at the level of Steve Jobs. But otherwise, he can be who he wants. And what matters for T-Mobile? What phones do they have? What's their pricing plans? That's it. Yeah. That's all that matters for them. And they rock it on those 2 fronts. Yeah. And also, they have great customer service.
At the same time, they're trying to get people to talk about them. They were the scrappy fourth player on the mobile. They're doing anything they can to be different. They changed their mobile policy, so now you buy a phone, you pay full price, or you spread it out over time. They're trying to change things up and do things that get you to talk about them. At the end of the day, it's still going to come down to, did you get accounts? Did people join you? I think they've seen some upticks in that. We'll have to see if that continues. I'm not making bets. I think that's going to come down to the service they're provided. But that's really what he's trying to do. If you look at his tweet stream, same thing. He's just doing what he can that will get people talking about the fourth place mobile brand.
And I don't think he plans to be the fourth place much longer, for sure. I am a big fangirl of T-Mobile because of the fact that he is really trying to shake things up. And they really were known for not being very great in rural areas, only in urban areas. And I got to say, even here at Twit, I always hear people talking about how they want T-Mobile and they have T-Mobile or they like T-Mobile. And I think the brand perception has changed. I think leadership definitely has an impact on the brand, whether you're the CEO. And you're right. No, he hasn't gotten naked, Natali, at a keynote, but I'm still
probably not a racist. We don't know that for sure.
No, he's a rapper, though. He likes rap music.
I'd like to see the whole keynote because I just read the statements that came afterwards, which obviously are planned. I work with, not these guys, obviously, but I do work with a lot of the executives on the product launches. All of those statements that grab the headlines, the ones that the bloggers repeat as part of their headlines, we put a lot of work into them. We know pretty much what people are going to pick up. You got to get inside the journalist's head. So it was interesting that people picked up on the Sprint. I mean, obviously that's planned. He's going to call out Sprint and everyone's going to write about it.
He totally did. I remember that was, I think we all went, and I know. And he was clear to say that next would be AT&T, but he didn't say that would be this year. He did specifically say Sprint this year. Dude, you got 6 months. What's going to happen? I don't know. Sprint's probably shaken. But how important is it when you hire a CEO from a brand perspective? So look at Patrick Byrne, whom I'm a big fan of Patrick Byrne. Whether you believe you like him on a personal level or not, he's certainly been a renegade. He founded Overstock. They've done a lot of things first. They're very successful in the online purchasing space. How important is it? I mean, you talk about Steve Jobs in the past, and Tim's trying to certainly fill those shoes. But when you talk about leadership, when you talk about CEOs pushing the brand forward, how important is it for the consumer? Because Natali, you said people don't really pay attention, but I think maybe not for the keynote, but I certainly think people do understand the leadership of the brand, and it kind of has an impact on our purchasing decisions. How important is it for them to be a renegade, or do they just need to run a good business? I mean, is it a balance, or what's the secret sauce, Brett?
I liked that Tim brought back the one last thing this time. He did that well, and I think he was. He does a decent job. I just don't think he's got the pizzazz of Steve. There was something about Steve Jobs. But he's a very difficult act to follow. We don't see Johnny Ive getting up on the stage, although he has that sort of persona. But I don't think he's a presenter. It's a pretty hard act to follow, Steve Jobs. Having said that, I think they executed it really well, apart from the stream, and it was nuanced, really, really well in terms of those messages. And that one last thing, they really did do that well this time. A big announcement off the back of it, and that sort of felt like the old Apple this time around.
And does everybody, Brett, does everybody, you watched it, Brett, do you remember what they said about the Apple Watch, right? You remember the tagline. What's the new tagline for the Apple Watch? The most personal device we've ever created.
That's it.
Yeah, most personal device. Look it up on Google, 20,000 stories that use that, and many of them on ABC News, that's their headline. So even though it's in quotes, the most personal device Apple has ever created, nobody looks at the quotes. I mean, all of that is very, very much thought out in terms of marketing for many, many weeks ahead of time. I know that as a fact. Yeah.
So
I read a book last week called The Effortless Experience. Have you guys read this?
Not yet. Writing it down.
All right. So these are statisticians who did a story, or actually I think they're advisors or whatever. So they did really big data study where they tried to see what makes consumers loyal. And all the things that we think makes consumers loyal are none of the things that we think they are. So, you go over and above for somebody, someone calls in and you call them back 7 times or whatever. What really makes consumers loyal is to make something effortless for them. So like I said, what John Legere does, it's only really going to matter if he makes like a Chick-fil-A kind of thing where people are like, they're, funding anti-gay campaigns. I'm out, not giving you my money, right? Those are the things that really turn you away. But when you're trying to think about what makes consumers loyal is how easy you make it for them. They don't want to ever call you. They don't want to talk to you. They are happy to solve problems themselves. And so the brands that really do this wrong is like, oh, let me come into your house and rub your back and do all these, right? That's not really what we want. We want people to just get out of our way, and we want products that work. So when we talk about T-Mobile, we're talking about a company that has a really great consumer facing attitude. We're talking about Apple. They make it easy for us. Those are the things that matter. And so to talk about like, well, do we care what their CEO is like? We care. You and I, the 5 of us talking on this podcast, because it's kind of our business, right? But think about, do your moms care? Do your kids care? Not a whole lot. They care about the experience.
But, I would say, you mentioned Chick-fil-A, and I have to say that even though they didn't ask for that controversy, it was kind of brought to them. In fact, it was put on them. They actually did quite well at the end of this. And I think there have been many other brands who have been in kind of a controversial light and have not come out on the negative end. So it seems to me that it doesn't matter if you, they had people kind of jump to, and I honestly think that they came out really well. I mean, what do you say about that?
But these are controversies, right? We're talking about like when there's no controversy, when it's just like, I care that Mark Benioff is a likable guy, but most people don't. Right? I mean, when people actually come to use a service or something, who cares what their CEO is like? This is what people care about. They care about how you make their life easier and then get the heck out of the way. That's what they want. And so this talk about how much it matters that John Legere is kind of a loose cannon is just fun for us. But that's not really going to affect their bottom line, in my opinion.
I agree.
But what I'll say is I think CEOs set, the aura or the culture that a company has. And we can go through different companies over the years. Steve Jobs actually could be a great example from Apple. What was he known for? It was that user experience. It was this attention to detail. Guess what? Apple still has that. The CEO establishes that culture. The former CEO over at Southwest is another good example. Established the culture at Southwest and what they were about. And you felt that no matter where you were at with them. So I think the CEO has a big deal with that. At the same time, I think we put too much credence in all these things. At the end of the day, it's about what they do for me. Did they create a great experience for me? Did they make it easy for me? Did they make my life easier? If they accomplish those things, they'll never be successful. Why do people like, certain airlines? One of my favorite airlines, actually, one who was a CEO who does a lot of these things. It's Ryanair. It's over in Europe. Ryanair was a low-cost provider, and their CEO has said some great things over the years. He wanted to have standing room only planes. At one point, he wanted to get rid of the bathrooms on planes.
And they were
he wanted to charge for the bathroom too. That was the other piece to it. And it's really fascinating because if you actually look at how they performed, they were actually one of the best performing airlines up till about a year ago. And the funny thing is, about a year ago, it's probably not even a year ago, it's probably started this year, the CEO came out and said, oh, by the way, their brand all over the net, they would be ripped apart. There's pages dedicated to how horrible they are and all these fees they charge. He laughed when a customer was mad that they had to pay £60 to print a boarding pass at the airport. Basically, he called her an idiot or something along those lines. And you sit and wow, what a horrid experience. But their revenues actually were really great. Then they say, oh, it's now the user experience. We're not doing well enough in that. We need to fix our user experience. Hate to tell him he was dead wrong. Nothing to do with their user experience. It had to do with the fact that the airline fares were now on par with British Air. British Air came down in their fares, and now they're on par with British Air. And people basically said, okay, am I going to go with Ryanair, where I'm going to pay all these extra fees, or am I going to go with British Air? They went with British Air. So things aren't always even about user experience. They're about a lot of different things. And at the end of the day, it is established by the CEO, but you have to keep that and you have to maintain whatever that is. In their case, they forgot that they were the low-cost provider and allowed someone else to catch up to them. Big mistake.
I think the airline industry specifically is one of those industries that it's really difficult when you're unhappy with them because you don't always have a choice. So that one is a little different, but often we do have choices and we don't. I want to get to that a little bit more. I also want to talk about the NFL and some controversy there, and kind of going with what Natali said. Does that mean we're still not going to buy a product or service, or we're still not going to participate? But before we do that, I want to thank another sponsor of Marketing Mavericks, which is ZipRecruiter.com. So here's the big question. Are you hiring marketing people, I don't know, web designers, search engine people, somebody to help you with your sales and marketing efforts? Well, do you know where to post your job to find the best candidates? Well, posting your job in just one place is not enough to find quality candidates. If you want to find the perfect hire, you need to post your job on all the top job websites. And now you can. With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post your job to 50 plus job sites, including Craigslist, LinkedIn, Twitter, all with one single click. Find the candidates in any city or industry nationwide. Just post once and watch those qualified candidates roll into ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use interface. No juggling emails or calls to your office. Quickly screen candidates, rate them, and hire the right person fast. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by over 250,000 businesses. And right now, our listeners can try ZipRecruiter for a free 4-day trial by going to ZipRecruiter.com/MM. That's ZipRecruiter.com/MM. And we thank ZipRecruiter for their support of Marketing Mavericks. And I remember when you had to, you placed an ad in the paper. I'm so dating myself. You placed an ad in the paper. You had people call in. You had to sit and interview them. What a hassle. And you never got anything else done. Well, now it's so much easier. Gosh, now that I'm not really hiring anybody, it's so easy. Do you guys hire people? I mean, would you use ZipRecruiter? Just saying. It's easy. 50 plus job sites.
It's all LinkedIn and network these days.
I know people that found jobs on LinkedIn that were not posted anywhere else. So it amazes me that people do not actually use LinkedIn to its fullest capability because you just don't know what else is out there. LinkedIn is great. Don't even get me started. That's a whole nother show. Just saying. Okay, so I don't know. Are you guys football fans? I'm not a super big football fan, although I know Leo and Lisa here at Twit are big 49ers fans, and we're in California, so that makes sense. I spent a month or so in Seattle and became, in January, so timely, became a Hawks fan over that period of time. I'm from Colorado, so Broncos go. I follow it. I'm not so diehard, but there's been some controversy over what the NFL does to actually support kind of some controversial issues, including spousal abuse with Ray Rice and what they did and how they handled that issue, where they knew about this video that came out of Ray Rice in an elevator with his, at that point, fiance, now his wife, where he punched her in the face and drug her out of the elevator. It was really kind of a horrible thing to see, and it's a horrible thing to do. But they kind of didn't really talk about it, and they didn't really act on it. Now that all of the media has come out about it, they've decided to make some sort of action. And it is fans of football and people who are excited about football season. That's not going to prevent us from buying tickets, but yet that's all people are talking about. I'm a huge supporter of fighting spousal abuse and those kinds of issues. I've had personal experience with friends. So I think it's such a horrible thing, but is it really the NFL's place? And as it a brand, if you have an employee that's doing something, what do you do? I mean, I think this is an interesting topic because fans are very upset about this. What do you say, Natali? I mean, are you a football fan?
Oh, I like the event of football. I like to sit on the couch with my family. I like the Niners because they're my home team too. But I don't care that much. I definitely do care that the NFL has been sort of turning their head at bad behavior. I've tried to sort of draw a parallel between what if I, beat my husband? Would I be invited back on Twit? Would I lose my job at NBC? Would I be disciplined that way? Like, I tend to have pretty public jobs too, so I think that I would be made an example of. But what if I didn't, right? What if I was a bookkeeper or something like that? Most of the time your employer doesn't get involved, but because this is so public, it is their responsibility to do something that shows that they don't condone this. And I think you have to peel back the onion and why are these players empowered to pick on people that are weaker than them, right? Like the whole culture of the NFL, they're running around whoa, right?
Statistically, that's not what, in the NFL, they actually have less. Actually, there's a story on Community's Digital News that actually looks at the data. And the data of the NFL is there's actually less than the general population, which, many people will be surprised about because we often, have this stuff blasted. And, as we know, there's multiple cases going on this week, which are, one involving a child, which really irks me. But the fact is, we tend to blame all the NFL, and that's not necessarily the case. I would also make the case that, what's more broken here? The fact is, we didn't prosecute. Why? We should have been looking at that same video. I watched that video. I don't care whether she wants to prosecute or not. That should have been prosecuted. I say we have a societal issue here. That is a bigger issue than Goodell. I can care less about the chairman of the NFL. Ultimately, I care more about society. And, that to me is the issue. And the fact is, if he would have been prosecuted, it would have forced the NFL to do something. The fact is, not guilty, not put in court or whatever it was, that's a bigger issue. And so, but there's actually interesting statistics out there. And that's why, I'll get this over to you guys, because it's an interesting article to read about the data. And it goes through based on studies of the, number of cases and whatnot for that age group. And when you compare it to the general populace, it's actually much less.
And Brett, I know you have to go. I know you've got another commitment. Do you have a 2 cents on this? I mean, is this something that whether it's the NFL or the Ravens? I mean, is this something that they're responsible to come out and talk about, or I mean, who does it land?
Whenever you're in the public eye, you have more of a responsibility for dealing with these things appropriately. There is got to obviously be, there's a cultural issue here, that people are talking about, whether it's a societal issue, as Frank is saying, whether it's an NFL culture issue, that's maybe a different discussion. The problem I had is that, you got a situation where social pressure has moved them to make a move, to adjust their strategy on this, but they already knew this happened months ago and they didn't at the time. So it's only the social media coverage of this and so forth that has pushed them to push Ray Rice out. That's what I have a problem with in this. If they really felt that what he'd done was wrong, then they should have disciplined him appropriately. A two-game suspension is not an appropriate discipline for this. And regardless of what Ray's wife says, they've got to set an example for that. So my problem is that they knew about this months ago and didn't act then. They only acted when it came out.
Well, I appreciate you joining us, Brett, too, for this conversation. I know you got a scat.
Guys. Sorry, I got to leave you. I got calls with Hong Kong and stuff.
He's a super busy guy. Thanks for that. Peace out. I think, Brett really hit the nail on the head, is that they didn't come out and do anything. And I think as consumers, we have a choice as to how we want to use our dollars, but it's football. So are we going to not support them? I mean, I don't know, Carmine, what do you think?
Yeah, it never ceases to amaze me how these corporate leaders can see something that is so atrociously shocking, and they know that it's going to be a problem with many of people on social media or their fans, and let it get by. I mean, I'm done trying to predict these guys anymore. Whether it's been the oil industry with BP or whether it was the Concordia, the ship in Italy. You see the way people act. They know that there's problems. And they know that even given what we just saw from the Clippers, right? I mean, that became a big social media scandal. And nobody says anything. it's. I've stopped trying to figure it out. Actually, Tonya, I'm just. It's not my thing anymore.
You're done. You're done with this. I tell you what. Last night, and I know we're running out of time, but yet another incident where people were calling out. I don't even want to say his name almost, but a rapper who and it has a very famous wife based on her some physical attributes as well as a reality show that her family puts on. He I watched a video of him yelling at fans saying stand up, and the guy was in a wheelchair. I
saw that. But yeah, I saw that on TMZ or on the video. What a moron. That is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. How can and nobody calls these people out? It's astonishing to me. You've got a circle of social media experts and their PR and their publicists, and nobody says anything because they don't want to lose their job.
Are you guys going to not buy his rap album because he's so full of himself? I don't know. This isn't the first time he's done something. Yeah, the chat room's kind of blowing up about this. But I had several friends who posted on social platforms and their blog saying, let's, choose not to download his music. But as consumers, is that going to really make a difference? Or is the average consumer going to say, I'm not going to buy your music because of something you did? And celebrities do this kind of stuff all the time.
The fact is, I'm not his customer. I wouldn't have bought it anyway. And I think I would be a bad person to judge on that. I will influence, maybe a little bit. Might even create some buy, for some ungodly reason. But I'm not his customer, so it's hard for me to comment on that.
I know that, Natali, this is your workout music, right? Uh-oh, she's muted again.
No, I'm not.
Oh.
I'm here. Am I?
Wait.
I was starting to think you're Augie.
No, that was my fault.
Anthony muted you. Anthony.
Was I being loud otherwise?
So are you going to not purchase? What do you think the average consumer? I think you're pretty connected to the average person and what they're going to do. And we see this time and time again. People don't just stop buying music because of some absurd or rude or ignorant thing that a celebrity does, right?
Right, and that's a pretty honest mistake. You could be hosting Twit and be like, hey, not everyone's being loud enough and someone's deaf in the audience. Right?
Okay,
That's
crowd, everybody, woo!
It happens. So I don't think that's the worst thing he can do. But again, what do you have to do to really hurt your brand? I guess that's not a relevant question for Kim Kardashian. But what can most people do to hurt their brand, right? I could say something super racist, really sexist. I don't know. You have to in this day and age, you have to do something really offensive.
I would agree. And people do it all the time. It doesn't really affect it. And as marketers, it just makes us have to figure out how to come back with the right statement. I want to thank you guys for being on the show. I know we're completely out of time, so there's probably some stuff we didn't get to today, but maybe next time. And Carmine, I appreciate you coming on the show. If somebody wants to connect with you, they want to check out your work, maybe hear you speak somewhere, what's the best way they can do that?
Twitter handle is Carmine Gallo or CarmineGallo.com.
And Frank, if somebody wants to get your book, maybe hire you to speak at an event, talk to you about customer service, whatever it is, what's the best way they can do that?
At Frank Eliason is my Twitter handle. Connect with me on our LinkedIn, or my email is frank@frankeliason.com. We're chatting about this stuff.
And Natali, if they want to follow your Pinterest or see where you're going to be, what network you're speaking on next about what really interesting thing that's happening in news and tech, how should they do that?
Natali Morris, Natali with an I only on Twitter is a good feed for all that stuff. Or there's LinkedIn, there's Pinterest, there's all the normal channels. Sometimes I write on Medium too, but that's only when someone really pisses me off usually.
If someone really loves me, they connect with me on Twitter and Pinterest. Otherwise, I don't know. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Good chat, guys.
And that wraps up another episode of Marketing Mavericks. We appreciate everybody who's tuned in. And if you want some sort of specific guest or topic, please feel free to email me at mavericks@twit.tv. You can follow me, as I mentioned, on Pinterest, of course, but you can tweet me at Twitter or find me on Facebook. Let me know what you think about the show and what you'd like to see next discussed. Everybody, have a great evening, and we'll talk to you next time on Marketing Mavericks.